Ever think about a career as an actor or an actress? Well, there are lots of other careers in the performing arts beside the lead roles. We've got some friends with us today to talk about possibility of theater as a career. Mark Paulson, who is resident director of the Lakeshore Players, and Jim Westbrook, one of the high school students involved in the current production, which is
As You Like It by William Shakespeare.
And is Shakespeare something new for you?
Yes.
How do you feel about it? Are you enjoying it, getting into it?
Yes.
Now, the Lakeshore Players is an amateur theater group, isn't it, Mark?
Right.
So this means that people don't get paid to be involved in the production.
Yes, I'm the only paid production member in the whole theater.
How are careers in theater? Is there a pretty good opportunity for young people to get jobs, get employment in the theater?
I would say it's probably one of the least probable areas to gain a living employment from.
Really hard to get into.
Very, very difficult. There are not that many positions available compared to other careers where you can really earn a living.
And yet, in the Twin Cities, we're surrounded with theatrical groups. We've got, besides the Lakeshore, we've got Chanhassen, we've got Camara, many of the others. How can so many theater groups be in existence without paid actors?
I think the Twin Cities has one of the finest community attitudes towards theater. There's no other community in the United States that has as many theaters active at one time, as many amateur groups, and produce as many new scripts in a year as are produced here in Minneapolis and St. Paul.
So there's chance for our young people in the community to get involved in theater. Let's take a look at Mark and the other members of Lakeshore Players that work on the current production. Now, we open in the office, and the business office is a big part of any community theater, isn't it, Mark?
Right.
What kind of skills do you need in order to be a resident director of something like Lakeshore as far as the book end of it?
Well, to be a director, I guess you have to have done everything else in the theater before you can really get into directing and understand how everything else functions. Actually, at Lakeshore, I don't do a lot of the bookkeeping, the business end of the theater, but I handle all of the production, all of the work that goes into producing a play on the stage. Here we're in the makeup room. Our theater, we might mention, is in an old church, and this is the kitchen of the old church. There's a counter there already, and we put mirrors up and had makeup lights installed, and so this is the area that we use for makeup.
And all these people learn how to do their own makeup?
Yes.
It's fascinating to watch.
They sometimes need a little help when we first get started, but like after 2 or 3 shows with us, they're very confident with what they're doing.
And if they aren't going to be performers, there are other roles for people to get involved in, aren't there?
Yes, here we see a group of people from the property crew building a full-sized deer that's used on stage in one scene. When the foresters come through, they've just killed the deer.
So you have a real market for carpenters and other craftsmen as well.
Just about any talent or craft that anyone has is applicable somewhere in the theater.
I couldn't get over what a good time they all seem to be having, really enjoying their work.
I think that's one of the key things. Community theater, amateur theater can be good theater, but it first of all has to be fun theater. And this is what we try to do at Lakeshore, at least. We don't get so involved in the pressures of producing good theater that we overlook having fun with what we're doing.
This is kind of a point we want to make today, that if you enjoy being involved in the theater and maybe feel that you can't make a career out of it, you can still have an awfully good time with it by using it as a leisure time activity. Now, this is Ted Gillen, your musical director for the show, and you said he wrote the music for this.
Yes, this is actually the 3rd show that Ted and I have collaborated on in terms of writing original music and setting it to a production. It's the first show that we haven't done that isn't an original production. We've done 2 others where I wrote the script and Ted wrote the music. But this has been highly successful. Ted has a real grasp of what he's doing in terms of music and an awful lot of talent.
I enjoyed his method for getting the piano to sound like a harpsichord by putting thumbtacks in the pad, which gives it quite a tingly sound. And some of your musicians are also high school students, aren't they?
Yes, we have 2 of the girls that are playing flutes are high school students. The two other girls and the girl who is going to be directing the orchestra are college students. So we use a lot of student participation.
Jim, how many students are in this cast?
4 total.
Now you're directing this particular performance, Mark. Do you do other things besides direct Lakeshore Players?
No, this is my only job.
Do you feel that it is a good income for someone to start out in the theater as a director?
It's not an income that is commensurate with the amount of time and education that has to go into preparing for it. But I think you have to find other rewards other than money, per se, for the work that you're doing.
So we can't always measure what we get out of a job by the financial return. It's whether we enjoy our work or not.
I think even in jobs where you make a lot of money, you have to enjoy what you're doing or you won't be happy.
Now you used a lot of different techniques in this. The slide carousels, the 5 or 10 different carousels
10 slide projectors.
to change your scenes for the play, which was quite different.
We had 5 large circular screens above and behind the action on stage. And in the orchestra loft, we had a bank of 10 slide projectors and 5 dissolve units. And we did all of the realistic or big physical scene changes on these projectors.
Now these people are all employed in other fields, aren't they?
Right. The blonde woman there, Karen Howe, is a high school teacher at Forest Lake. And this gentleman here is a hairdresser down in Minneapolis. And the other girl that you see in this scene is a student, and actually the other boy in the scene is a student too.
So you really have a melting pot of professions coming together with a common interest in community theater.
This fellow here, Ray Ensrud, is studying to go into broadcasting, radio and TV broadcasting.
The costumes I thought were really especially good. Did many of these costumes made by people in the theater?
Almost all of them, I would say about 90% of them, were made by our staff at Lakeshore, the costume construction crew. We did borrow some things. Generally, we borrow bits and pieces of things, but we make most everything that we use. Now this, the boy that you see here in this scene is a freelance photographer, and the girl that's playing with him is a student at the university.
And he was also involved running the carousels behind the scenes when he wasn't out on front acting.
Both of our photographers also had roles in the play, and they took turns running from the projection booth to the stage.
So you really have to have a variety of skills if you're involved in community theater, don't you?
Right.
Jim, is this your first production with Lakeshore?
No, this is my 4th.
So you're getting to be an old pro. I understand that the fellow in the white tights on the left of our screen was a first-timer in this play.
Yes, this is the first play that he's ever done. He's a student at Lakewood Junior College out near White Bear.
They really threw themselves into this scene. I couldn't get over the physical activity. I imagine they pick up a few bruises by the time they're done with a production like this.
The theater is kind of like a circus. It has to have a certain element of danger in the performance to really keep the audience keyed into it.
That looks like a businessman that I know of.
Yes, this is Florin Herring. He's with Linoleum Sales in St. Paul.
So they're not all necessarily related to broadcasting or English or dramatics or...
By no means. We have lots of the people who work for us work with 3M Company, because there are a lot of them that live in that area. And Control Data, a lot of the people that work for us come from there. They do all kinds of things in their regular work, and then in the evenings they come out to the theater and either perform or work as technicians and so forth. This is the scene that Jim is in here. It's a scene that takes place in a cave deep in the forest.
I was impressed with the props here, the table and the other things. Now, did you say you made those items?
Yes, those are all made.
See, your training at the university in theater has really paid off with some of these ideas that you've been able to put forth.
Mhm.
Jim, you said that whole families are involved in this, didn't you? Mention something about how you got involved?
Yes.
A lot of families in the community. How did you get involved? Were you involved in the dramatic classes that they have out there for young people?
No, I was just, the Ellens family is real active in it. And, well, Carl, I go to school with him, and he decided, that we should try out for Oliver, I was a little hesitant at first, but then Marty Brooks, he's another one, and so we decided to all try out, and so we did.
So you got a little courage by all being together when you tried out.
Mm-hmm.
And you obviously enjoyed it.
Jim has done almost every musical we've done because he has a very good singing voice. As a matter of fact, 3 of our boys from Oliver, which we did at the end of last season, then went down and did Chimera's production of Oliver at the beginning of their season this year. So they did Oliver back to back in 2 different theaters.
I was going to ask you how you ended up with a singing role in this play.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy singing before you got involved with Lakeshore, or did you get involved with singing after you got into the theater?
Well, I sang, like, at school and everything, but not publicly or nothing until Lakeshore.
How do your friends react to this? Do they give you a kind of a hard time about it, or do they kind of get a kick out of it?
I don't know. They don't, like some people they come to see, like they came to see Toad, and they thought that was real funny because they were all dressed up like weasels and everything.
That was the Christmas play, wasn't it?
Yes.
Mr. Toad Comes Home for Christmas?
Right.
Is that right? Now, there were a lot of young people involved in that production, weren't there?
Yes.
I had a cast of about 70 on a stage no bigger than this studio.
That's quite a good number of bodies to work with, especially beginning actors.
Mhm.
And Oliver, again, was a case of young people predominantly in it, wasn't it?
Yes.
Have you thought, since you've been in this, about making a career out of it?
Yes, I have, but it just seems like there's so many people who try to find a career but don't really make it, and there's very few that do make it, so I'm just going to do it for a hobby on my side.
Just as a kind of a fun thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have other brothers and sisters involved?
No.
Not yet, but you've got some younger ones coming up.
Yes.
How long has Lakeshore been in operation, Mark?
This is our 20th season. The theater, we had another old church over on 2nd Street in White Bear for the first 17 years, and then that theater burned down in 1969, and the organization moved into the high school auditorium for about a year and a half, and then we bought the church at the corner of 6th and Stewart Streets, and this is our 2nd season there.
How do you account for the fact that Lakeshore has lasted for 20 years when so many other theatrical groups have faded away?
You have to give credit, I think, to the White Bear audience. The people from White Bear itself make up probably 60% of our audience. And And you have to give credit to the people who have been working with us over the years. We've had a very good relationship, and we're probably one of the few community theaters in the Twin Cities area that operates almost totally without any foundation support of any kind. It operates in the black.
So you really need to get the people in the community involved to get the support when you're doing your productions. And you have classes for children also?
Yes, we have classes in drama and classes in dance for younger children.
Would you have any advice to give to young people who are thinking about, doing this even as a hobby, maybe to get some training so that they can get in more easily?
I think you often think, well, I can't do this because I've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested at all in doing it, there are at least 4 or 5 new productions auditioning almost every week in the Twin Cities. And all you have to do is look in the Sunday newspapers under auditions and find a play that has some people in it that are your age, and just get out there and do it. You know, go and audition and try out. Because I would say, on the average, 20 to 30% of the people in my shows have never been on stage before at all. And there's always a part for somebody that's just right for somebody. And you've just got to keep plugging away at it till you find that part.
I think that's a good idea. Did you start at an early age with theater yourself?
I think the first real connection that I had with theater was when I was about a senior in high school, although all through high school and even back into grade school I had been doing things which were theater oriented, but I just never really knew it. Writing scripts and staging productions, really, but I never thought they were theater.
So this might be a clue to some of the students if they're interested in writing, or maybe the music side of it, like, you know, Jim, who's developed a voice now. Maybe this is kind of a clue that they
The theater
could
is
make
something,
go of it.
too, that anybody can do. If you have a group in your neighborhood and you want to put on a play, if it's in the summertime, you know, write your play and put it on in your backyard, and invite everybody you can find to come and see it. You don't have to have an organization or a specific place to have theater. It's something that anybody can do, really.
And usually parents will come through and make some costumes and furnish the refreshments and give you the encouragement that you need. I think that's a good idea. I see a lot of young kids in our neighborhood. I don't know, did you ever do that when you were young, Jim? Have a
No.
little backyard production?
No.
No preparation for this at all.
I'll tell you something about this age group, though. Jim and Marty and Carl, they're not doing backyard theater. They're doing 8mm film work over at the theater, which is comparable to the things that we did when I was his age in terms of backyard theater. So
times change. We've gotten more sophisticated. Try to enjoy the theater, and go and at least be a good observer. See you next week. The topic today is architecture. Now, the Insculptic House may not be your typical house or the kind of house that most of you live in, but it is an idea, a thought that many architects are creating. It's one of the alternatives in architecture. With us today, a special guest, is Lane DeMaul. And Lane is with Criteria Architects. But Lane, you're not really an architect, are you?
No, it's kind of a complicated story, and I always have trouble telling it, but I'm educated as a social scientist and working right now as, well, basically as a social scientist, trying to get the people side of things into architecture.
So you're really bringing another dimension into architecture, aren't you? I mean, the main purpose of your being involved is that people's needs are met.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Architects are not trained, are not usually thinking in terms of people's ideas and people's problems. They're thinking in terms of the building, and this is what I'm trying to get.
And what are the things we should think of besides just the building? Is there some kind of a formula we can follow?
Well, the buildings, the places that we live and work in have to express what we are thinking, what kinds of activities need to go on there, how we need to feel when we're in certain kinds of places.
And tying in with the environment more.
Oh, very definitely, very definitely.
Let's see how the Insculptic House ties into the environment. It's a very light, airy feeling in the inside, isn't it, Lane? A lot of, I don't know whether to call them windows or portholes.
Sometimes they're windows and sometimes they're portholes. Sometimes they're kind of peepholes looking out. You can really see what's going on outside. Other times they're big, huge windows that you can follow. You know, feel the weather happening to you.
I would think you would have a very close sense of what was happening outside, and yet feel quite snug.
There are lots of little corners and hiding places to curl up and be very comfortable and soft.
Now, this is a very untraditional form of architecture. Certainly a good deal of imagination is shown here. Is it difficult for architects to execute ideas like this, you know, different kinds of walls and ceilings?
Well, sometimes it's expensive is part of the problem. If in this situation it was a very, it's poured fiberglass, poured polyurethane foam with fiberglass on top of it, and that was terribly expensive. If you're dealing with wood and other kinds of materials, it doesn't have to be expensive at all. You can get the same kinds of feelings, not quite so spacey, but the vistas and the cozy places can all happen.
I suppose we have to consider the future too, and the fact that if we do have a terrible shortage of wood, we are going to have other kinds of things to work with.
Yeah, that always has to be a consideration, though. The wood's going to be around as long as we're taking care of it. So that.
Which is a good point, as long as we're taking care of it. And maybe, as you said earlier, reusing it and incorporating it into new buildings.
Yeah, this is one problem that not a problem, but one thing that I feel is missing from the Insculptic House is they haven't reused materials. They don't have the wood in the old windows and the old fixtures, that kind of thing are not in there. It's all new.
You were talking about working in architecture as part of a team in bringing the human side into it. Is this a coming thing in architecture? Are more of them going for outside resources?
Yeah, very definitely. Architecture is getting very complicated in terms of both technically because of the new kinds of materials and in terms of what we're beginning to realize on how spaces, places affect people. And so architects are getting very much more concerned. People who are building buildings and places are very much more concerned with getting everybody involved. People like me who are very interested in the people side of it as well as the technical expertise. You know, how do you solar heat a house, for instance? Well, that takes a great deal of technical background.
Yes, solar heating by the sun, which is something that I think we are going to see more and more research on due
Oh,
to
yeah.
the fuel shortage and some of these crises that we're facing now.
Yeah, we have to. We have to if we're going to survive.
And certainly with young people more and more interested in ecology and preserving what we have, this will also help us move in this direction. I wonder how many students who are really interested in ecology have thought of architecture as a means of really working toward preserving the environment.
Oh, it's absolutely, it ties right in. The whole way you build on the land, the way you, whether it's in the cities or in the country, the kinds of materials you use, how you treat those materials, as well as just your whole frame of mind as you live and work in a place is all completely tied in with ecology, with environmental concerns.
Are there many opportunities for women in architecture today?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are not very many women in architecture for the same reasons there aren't many women in most professions, but it's a wide open field. There's plenty of room, especially with women's attitudes and sort of basic feelings about people and spaces. It'll be a very important place.
You did some community work too, didn't you, before coming to Criteria, in helping communities understand the impact of change, like what a high-rise would do in their neighborhood, helping them try to visualize and understand what was happening?
Well, I worked, helped direct the Community Design Center, which is kind of like a legal aid, only it's with volunteer architects helping community people. It's terribly important that people in the neighborhoods have an understanding of what's going on in their neighborhoods, have a very vital say in what happens to the neighborhoods. Do we tear down old buildings? Do we build new ones? What do they look like? How do we want to live with them? How do our streets look like? And we were helping them define those needs and say what they wanted to have.
How did you get so turned on about architecture?
Kind of grew up in the field. My dad was an architect. We designed our house as we were growing up, and I was very interested in the people side of it and the community side of it, and so I've worked in community design centers in several different areas of the country, and have just kind of stayed involved in the field, stayed interested in the input that I could have into the profession as a non-formally trained architect.
Which certainly gives you a different perspective. Tell me, if we have students who are interested in this kind of a career, what kinds of things should they be studying now and thinking about to get ready for that?
Well, there's a whole range. You can take everything from the very technical side of architecture, a lot of math and physics, which I wasn't very good at, which is why I stayed away from that side of it. Art, a good sense of design and what, how places look and feel, and most important for me, but not necessarily in terms of the profession, is dealing with people, understanding what makes people tick, how they react in different situations, how the space around them affects them.
Psychology would be
Psychology,
excellent.
sure. Sociology, all of those, anthropology.
You know, one neat thing about architecture, I think, too, is that even if you have certain physical limitations, it doesn't take great strength as some occupations do, or other physical assets. And I think one of the interesting things about Buckminster Fuller, who is known for, among other things, the geodesic dome, which we are sitting in front of, is the fact that he had a physical handicap and yet was not only able to overcome it, but it flavored his work throughout his life.
Yeah, the important thing in dealing with the environment, and it's exemplified, of course, by the very genius of Fuller, but is to have a broad conceptualization of what's going on, be able to zero in on the particular details and then figure out how the whole thing is going to work, whether you're dealing with one building or a neighborhood or a whole city, or back down to a small room.
Human faces, but I could not see a human eye or a teardrop or a human hair. Not until I was 4 years old, in 1899, was it discovered that my cross-eyedness was caused by my being abnormally farsighted. Lenses fully corrected my vision, but despite my new ability to apprehend details, my childhood's spontaneous dependence upon big patterns has persisted. I live on Earth at present, and I don't know what I am. I know that I'm not a category. I'm not a thing, a noun. I seem to be a verb, an evolutionary process, an integral function of the universe.
The geodesic dome is based on the principles that Fuller discovered in the 1940s. It combines a series of tetrahedron skeletons, or open three-dimensional pyramid shapes, in a self-supporting, basically spherical form. What is important about Fuller's work is his dedication to a youthful ambition of reconciling the evolution of man and the evolution of technology.
There are inexorably persuasive arguments in favor of cities under single umbrella shells, and it is no aesthetic accident that nature encased our brains and regenerative organs in compoundly curvilinear structures. There are no cubical heads, eggs, nuts, or planets.
His thinking about environmental planning for whole communities inspired another Expo landmark, Habitat 67, the prefabricated apartment units that demonstrated Fuller's impact is conceptual and not simply aesthetic.
I'm absolutely content that when I look at something that's finished, if it doesn't look beautiful to me, I haven't done it properly. But the beauty must be a consequence rather than something you attempt.
Conventional houses, which have not altered their essential form since the time of the Egyptians and Babylonians, are almost pure compression structures. They are built brick upon brick, or beam on column, and yet brick and stone support no more weight today than in the days of the Wall of Jericho. The great technological advance was in tension materials, like the new steel alloy cables. A logical modern house would have a structure similar to that of a wire wheel turned on its side, with the hub acting as a central, prefabricated compression member, an inflatable duraluminum mast. The remainder of the house would consist of walls and cable-supported floor decks suspended around the mast. In April 1928, Fuller completed the essential designs of the 4D house, a symbol standing for the fourth dimension. The windowless walls were of transparent but swiftly shutterable vacuum pane glass. The house was to be dustless. The air would be drawn in through vents in the mast, and then filtered, washed, cooled, or heated, and then circulated. Laundry was automatically washed, dried, pressed, and conveyed to storage units. Clothes and dish closets, refrigerator, and other food compartments contained revolving shelves, rigged to move at the interruption of a light beam. The entire house was designed to be relatively independent of piped-in water and thus fully operative wherever it was erected. A 10-minute atomizer bath was produced with a quart of water, which in turn would be filtered, sterilized, and recirculated. Fuller's toilets required no water at all. They consisted of a splashless, hermetic, and waterproof packaging system which mechanically packed, stored, and gross cartoned wastes for eventual pickup or processing by chemical industries. Dusting was by compressed air and vacuum systems. The 4D dwelling was designed to provide what Fuller conceived as high-standard functioning, unconsciously compatible with man's unconsciously coordinated internal mechanisms and chemistries.
Man is a self-balancing, 28-jointed, adapter-based biped, an electrochemical reduction plant, integral with segregated stowages of special energy extracts.
What was economically sensational about the planned 4D house was the cost to the consumer. Based on the price scale then current in the automobile industry, Fuller estimated that if such a house, completely equipped, could be marketed at 25 cents per pound in terms of the 1928 dollar, Fords and Chevrolets were selling at 22 cents per pound, the 4D house dwelling machine of 1928 would cost $1,500. Based on 1960 costs, mass-produced and distributed by the automobile industry, the house would sell for about $4,800, installed and ready for occupancy anywhere in the United States. However, this price would be possible only through the use of mass production techniques.
The possibility of a good life for any man depends upon the possibility of realizing it for all men. Having to choose between development of weapons and development of environment, governments always give priority to weaponry. Resources and the best minds are channeled into defense rather than into social problems.
Fuller introduced the geodesic dome in 1948. Since boyhood, he had been fascinated by the nature of space and its relation to traditional principles of geometry. And in 1944, he began the practical application of structural principles, deciding that the tetrahedron was nature's fundamental building block. This four-sided pyramid, whose sides are all equilateral triangles, represented to Fuller a natural balance of forces pushing and pulling at all points. It came closest to his maxim of doing the most with the least, since it was the most stable, solid figure with the fewest sides.
I think all nature's structuring, associating, and patterning must be based on triangles, because there is no structural validity otherwise. This is nature's basic structure, and it is modelable.
A geodesic dome is formed theoretically by flattening the tetrahedron, or pushing out its equilateral triangular sides and joining it to other identical figures. In addition to the dome formed from this four-sided tetrahedron, other domes are formed from 8-sided and 20-sided figures. The geodesic dome's surface provides maximum resistance to outside forces, and it solved a skylight weight problem that had long baffled architects. By the late 60s, more than 5,000 geodesic domes had been built in 50 countries. The tensegrity structures in geodesic domes appear deceptively frail, but they are composed of systems of compression and tension. An octet truss, a frame of tetrahedron-octahedron combinations, has an enormous load-carrying capability. In terms of economy, strength, and lightness, the geodesic dome is an ultimate triumph of principle over matter.
Imagination and creativity are the key. And if you are interested in architecture, study old buildings, visit architects. They'll be glad to help you find out more about it. You may not be another Bucky Fuller, but you may be the salvation to tomorrow's world.
Today, Pathways explores the world of the elementary school teacher, a person so busy that she has to hurry to get everything in. Today's elementary school teacher is a miraculous combination of things. She has to be a musician, an artist, a judge, a referee, a lawyer, a mother, a custodian, a general, a traffic director, a magician, an actor, a zookeeper, a gymnast, a housekeeper, a nurse, a furniture mover, a politician, a diplomat, and a salesman. In the course of her day, she's expected to teach reading, math, language, spelling, creative writing, physical education, literature, social studies, science, music, art, and drama. There are some days when there's so much to do that it seems you can't get it all in. While teaching this, she's expected to keep her sense of humor, a steady hand, and always be patient. She's expected to love those children every minute of the day. She's always has to have a smile ready for her students and a word of encouragement. The elementary school classroom teacher is truly a modern invention, although she's been in existence for years. Her world is one that includes many people in addition to children. It may include the principal. It may mean a rush job of a last-minute task that needs to be done. But it always leaves room for a lot of love and the shared joys and successes with parents. You know, the elementary school classroom teacher is probably a person you're very familiar with. But today on Pathways, we want to look a little bit deeper than perhaps you're aware that there is. We want to talk about teaching as a profession, and I, for one, can speak personally that it's a very exciting and rewarding as well as challenging profession. But I guess the best way to find out about it is to see a teacher in action. And today here we are delighted to have Mrs. Judy Davis, a teacher at St. Anthony Park School, and some of her students. Watch as she teaches them.
This morning, I asked you to draw pictures of yourself and your best friend. And you know, looking over them, I really enjoyed looking at them. You know why? For one reason. Can you guess? Because every person was smiling and their friend was smiling. Is that the way you feel when you're with your best friend?
Yes. Yes.
What kinds of things do you enjoy doing with your best friend? Nanette?
Jump roping.
Jump roping. Peter?
Things about drama.
Drama. What do you mean, things about drama?
Oh, different voices. Not always the same thing all the time.
You mean you and your friends exchange voices, or?
No, we go over different people's voices.
Oh. Kirk?
Talking.
Talking.
Stuff.
What do you talk about?
Things we did. And
At
like
school and other
Yeah.
places. Becky?
Fighting.
Fighting. You mean you enjoy fighting? How come?
When I get trampled on, we always laugh.
And it's fun because it's with your best friend. Nanette?
Telling jokes and cracking up.
Cracking up. Are there times when you and your friend don't really agree on the same thing? Are there times when you have kind of a rough time, you can't really decide what you're going to do or play or work on? Becky?
Well, one time when I was jump roping, she said that she wanted to play basketball, and I said that I didn't want to, and so we started fighting, and then we started laughing because we didn't really want to play either.
Even though you were angry with each other for, like a couple minutes, are you still friends? Nanette?
I play two square. It's, when you and your best friend get together, you always fight. You can't cooperate.
And then later, do you come to some sort of feeling of cooperation? Do
Yeah.
you know when that is?
Yes,
When?
when we're done fighting.
When you're done fighting. Peter?
Well, I was over at my friend's house, and when
First we wanted to do something we couldn't find it. Then we wanted to do another thing, and that didn't work out. And we were just running all over the house.
Did you ever settle down on one thing? And can you remember what that was?
It was this one record.
That you really enjoyed together.
Yes.
So many of your pictures have each other, you know, holding hands and really enjoying things together. Kirk, is there a time when you and your friend didn't agree on something, but you worked it out?
I know.
Becky?
I went over to his house and we were deciding on what to do for this skit on a record. And I wanted to do one thing for the end of the record and he wanted to do another.
Friends are good people to have, aren't they? We're always with them, and even though sometimes it seems that we don't agree on everything, we still come back to our good friend. Why do you suppose that is? Why do we come back to this person? What do we feel about this person? Kirk?
We like them so much. I mean, like, it's, you know, we just like them so much we can't get away from them.
Right.
Mm,
And
yeah.
even though there are times you absolutely disagree on things, you find that you come back to them. Oh, that's really beautiful. Nanette?
If you were a friend to someone and you were playing and then you just quit playing together, and then you'd feel sort of lonely and that you wanted to play with that friend again.
And so you'd
Yeah.
somehow bring yourself back to that person, even though you had differences. Becky?
Well, sometimes I hate my best friend because she really gets mad at me because I do one thing wrong. And then I never go back to her because I know that all my friends always come back to me if I do something wrong.
You can somehow understand that each person is not going to always do exactly what you want to do. Peter?
Well, sometimes I feel that I have too many friends and I just have to have some time alone.
That's a real good point. And what do you do when you feel that that is the time you have to be by yourself and be alone?
Well, it's when lots of friends ask me, do you want to do one certain thing? They all ask me, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So,
And then you just go off and are by yourself for a while. But would you always want to be by yourself?
not for long.
No.
I'd
It
always
would get
find-
kind of... You just wouldn't feel very good about it, would you? You'd want to get back to that friend as soon as you could.
Well, I think that was very interesting. But, you know, I think maybe some of the students watching didn't understand exactly what you were teaching. So maybe you could give us, what were you working on? What was the purpose of your lesson with the children?
Mrs. Swanson, since the beginning of the year, I have worked on a basic objective. And that is, I guess it should be everyone's objective when they're working with people, whether they be children, adults, no matter who they are or where they are. And that is to instill self-dignity and to help the child understand himself and really feel good about himself. And as he feels good about himself, then he can really value the uniqueness of each other individual. And this is what I was really pointing out today, is that we're all different. But if we can take these differences and understand them and are aware of them, we feel good about ourselves.
And that's really a very important lesson, even though it's maybe not as obvious as teaching how to do an arithmetic problem or something like that.
Not nearly as obvious, but much more rewarding.
And much more important, really, isn't it?
Really.
Now, I wonder if you could share with us what are some of the things that maybe are most disturbing to you as a teacher, the least advantageous?
Probably the fact that you have so many things to think about at the same time. You have 24, 25, 26 children, and you'd like to sit down and be with that one child endlessly. You have experiences that you just don't want to let pass by. They're too good. They're for the moment. And yet you have the lunch count, you have the attendance, and all these things sort of get in the way. And I think that this is the thing, if we can work with children to help them be with each other and understand each other, maybe we can make
more time for being with one another and less time for the trivial
Good.
tasks.
Can you very quickly, and this is the hardest one to answer quickly, I guess, but can you quickly tell us what the greatest joy of being a teacher, the greatest reward is?
I think it's seeing a child smile and saying, I like you, and I feel good, and I'm glad that I'm here.
And those are the days that make everything else worthwhile, isn't
You
it?
forget all the other things that go wrong.
Right. I think, at least in my own experience, that teaching has provided some real challenges. Sometimes in the form of a child, sometimes in the form of just other people, maybe parents working with them. Do you feel that this has been a rewarding career, though, that you would encourage other people to go into?
Definitely. I've taught for a long time, and I know that once I'm through teaching, I'm really going to miss it. But then, are you ever through teaching? You'll teach the rest of your life.
That's
and
a good comment.
That's the greatest part of it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming and showing us your gift of teaching with your children and sharing this special moment with us. Now we're going to take a special trip into the world of education and see some of the different things that are happening. So if we can travel by film, and we shall see some of the fun things that go with a teaching career. Basically, the qualifications for a teacher require a college degree. So if you are interested in pursuing your education, teaching is certainly one of the areas in which you can do it. A teacher, in addition to needing the college degree to begin with, needs to be continually going back, and if not taking courses at a university, taking workshops and updating. There's so much to learn and such a short period of time to learn it in. Another thing a teacher finds is very helpful is a lot of physical health. You've got to be healthy and have a lot of stamina to keep up with the kids every hour of the day at school. Another thing that a good teacher needs to have is emotional stability. You have to provide the anchor for those kids. You have to be the person who can be the one they turn to when they're in problems and able to help them cope with their problems. Teaching is undergoing a lot of change right now. We're beginning to see some things. Among others, the teaching career right now, there are more teachers than there are jobs available, and that's the first time that that's ever happened in the history of education. Hopefully this will mean that only the best qualified people will be teachers. This will also mean that perhaps people will consider a little more carefully whether or not they're cut out to be teachers before going into it. Most teachers, people in teaching, have classroom positions. Some are supervisors and administrators. But the change in education has made the classroom a little less easy to define. It's no longer the four walls with bookcases, bulletin boards, and chalkboards. Now the classrooms may be expanded out into the woods, or maybe in a garage with an automobile, as we saw before. Teachers are continually trying to make learning really meaningful to kids, related to their world, the world that they're a part of. And as a teacher, it's a good idea if you've got a very active imagination so that you can do this. We also are finding lots of experiments in the kinds of techniques that are being used in teaching. They're using more film strips and letting children use more film strips. Again, that imagination is really important, thinking of a new and fun and different way to do the same old stuff day after day, but making it seem new to children. We also find that there's a use of paraprofessionals. Now, we've used that word when we've talked about other professions, and that is people who are engaged in teaching but who may not be licensed teachers and college graduates. Paraprofessionals are often called teachers' aides, and whereas many of the teachers' aides we do have are trained professionals, their job is not the same responsibility as that of the classroom teacher. And unfortunately, they're not paid a great deal, but many people find this an acceptable way to do teaching on a more part-time basis. We also have some non-classroom teaching positions. In your school, I'll bet you've seen the speech therapist and the school nurse, the social workers and counselors, the librarians, and the resource teachers and specialists. These too are teachers, but they don't necessarily work with children every minute of the day. this is an area of education that is open for, again, people with college degrees. But beyond this, there are people involved in education and developing educational materials and writing textbooks and making up film strips. Somebody has to do that. They are also found in various areas of research. But as Mrs. Davis said, almost anybody can have teaching experiences, even if it isn't as a career. It might be as a leisure time activity. Perhaps you like teaching and you enjoy working with children and providing fun experiences, but you don't want to do it every day. For you, you might find teaching release as a Boy Scout leader, a Girl Scout leader, or a church school teacher. We'll also find that just being a good parent is being a good teacher. So analyze your own strengths and weaknesses. Think about what you have to offer. As these children tell what they think makes a good teacher, do you fit the bill?
A teacher is a teacher who likes children. A good teacher is a teacher with patience and who understands children.
A good teacher is a teacher that has good ideas.
She is a person that helps you with your problem. Good teachers express their ideas well.
Good teachers work hard. A good teacher tries to make things fun.
A good teacher is not selfish teacher. A good teacher's person has patience.
A sense of humor, likes children,
And talented.
understanding. A good teacher enforces fair rules. A good teacher is someone who listens to the kids.
A good teacher is a teacher who lets the kids help make the decisions. A good teacher is someone who doesn't get mad at you when you ask a question.
A good teacher is interested in you. A good teacher lets you do a variety of projects. A good teacher is a person who does things with her kids.
A good teacher is active with their students.
A good teacher shares interests with their students. A good teacher should let the children have enough activities so they don't get bored to death. A teacher is someone who helps you when you get stuck. A good teacher lets you have fun.
A good teacher is interested in your interests.
If you have a good teacher, cooperate with them and you'll stay good.